This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
A good Tuesday to you on this October 25th. Jesperson, Hicks, in the house. Looking forward to today's show. We're going to be all eyes on Ontario and Saskatchewan today. Of course, we'll pay attention to what's going on in our neck of the woods in our home province of Alberta as well. In just a moment, we've been looking forward to welcoming Stephen Punwasi to the program, a Toronto mayoral candidate, but much more than that. He's the co-founder of Better Dwelling. He took leave from that job to take on the establishment, essentially, and drive conversations about the cost of housing, about corruption in politics, about money laundering, and a whole bunch of other fascinating things. He's not the mayor of Toronto this morning. John Tory defended that office, and some interesting developments in Ontario's election last night. We'll take a look at that. Patrick Brown is back in as mayor of Brampton. The controversy didn't seem to hinder his chances. We'll get Stephen's take on that. Former party leaders have sought and achieved office. The NDP's Andrew Horwath in Hamilton, Stephen Del Luca in Vaughan. So we'll get into that with Stephen. Interesting conversation. And then you might call him the voice of Saskatchewan. No, not John Gormley. This era's voice of Saskatchewan, Quick Dick McDick. I said Quick Dick McDick is going to join us in about 20 minutes time, 25 minutes time into this show. The guy that's built a massive following online, on Twitter, on TikTok. Of course, his YouTube channel, more than 100,000 subscribers. Some of his stuff is funny. Some of his stuff biting political commentary. He lets you know exactly where he stands on political issues. And then sometimes he just teaches you how to smoke a meatloaf, or how to his great bachelor cooking tips have earned him a huge audience. No, we're going to have some fun with Quick Dick McDick. And then today also it's Tuesday, which means we'll celebrate innovation. A young entrepreneur and inventor in this week's edition of The Leading Edge, presented by Leading Edge Physiotherapy. So that'll be a good one. John Hicks in the house. We're talking about Ye this morning, the hip-hop artist formerly known as Kanye West, finally dropped by Adidas, and we say finally on purpose. A lot of people were wondering how long it was going to take. Kanye said he was going to get out of this deal, and he did, and probably due in part to some curious, is that the right word, comments like this one.
The thing about it being Adidas is like, I could literally say anti-Semitic shit and they can't drop me. I could say anti-Semitic things and Adidas can't drop me. Now what?
Yeah, and so people see that video a few days ago. I saw that courtesy of Rex Chapman's account, a great follow on Twitter. And the first question, the obvious one is, well, who wants to say anti-Semitic shit? But a lot of people were pointing out that Kanye said he was going to get out of this partnership, and he did. So mission accomplished, I guess.
Yeah, he's accomplishing a lot of things these days.
Jeez.
I think Kanye's always been like, he wants to go against the grain. He wants to be different. He wants to be seen as, he wants to be seen as a genius, but he wants to do things different. And that, combined with the fact that he is battling like mental illness, he's admitted it, and he's not taking medication. He's doing things like he knows he shouldn't be doing, but the other thing is it's kind of working. Like, he's in the headlines every day.
Everybody's talking about
But
him.
now it's for things that are kind of fucking horrible.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and I don't think he gets that because he's not right. So,
yeah.
you know,
I went to the
it's
account.
pretty sad.
It is actually sad. And the account that, and not to mention for like the millions of Jewish people around the world that are paying attention to this, let alone people that have appreciated his art, going like, what's the deal, man? What are you doing?
Yeah, and worse than that, he's being used now by people who love what he's saying.
Of course.
You know what I mean?
So it's been, his comments had been sort of co-opted or amplified by neo-Nazi groups around the world. This on the heels of him wearing the White Lives Matter t-shirt.
He's on Tucker Carlson.
Stirring things up, and et cetera, et cetera. So the account that I use to figure out what's going on in the world, the Liza Minnelli Outlives account, and I credit them. And again, we've mentioned this account several times because in all seriousness, I get half of my news from Liza Outlives, the Twitter account, announcing this morning that Liza Minnelli has outlived Kanye West's ties with Adidas. The company let him go after West's repeated anti-Semitic comments picked up by neo-Nazis across America. So wherever he goes from here, who knows? A lot of people are talking about, Ye's got his own plan to release his own line of footwear.
I mean, when you're a billionaire, do you need any? Like, he knows that he doesn't need anyone. He doesn't, he doesn't need Adidas. He can fortify himself in a mansion and heat his house with money for the rest of his life. You know what I mean?
Maybe
like,
that's the plan.
And that's the other sad thing. He's probably got a lot of head nodders around him, right? A lot of people, a lot of yes men, a lot of people who are just letting him do what he wants and telling him it's okay because, they're Kanye West's crew. You know what I mean? He's a billionaire, so
yeah,
it's just a really bad situation.
It is a bad
and it's going to get worse. And we're going to wake up one day and he's either going to be dead or, his entire empire in shambles because nobody put a stop to it. So
yeah. You wonder who's that going to be? Who's giving him the advice? Does he want the advice? What's this?
I think it would be his mom if she was still alive. But like ever since she passed away, he's kind of been on this downward spiral. But like, there's no way she would be telling him his actions today are like.
Wasn't she like a Harvard prof or something like that?
She was really smart
lady. Yeah. It kind of reminds me in a way, and I'm not saying that it is this, and maybe it is, and who knows. But remember, like back in the day when Joaquin Phoenix appeared to be a bit off the rails, and then people put two and two together and figured that it was all part of a big documentary project.
He was spoofing us.
Yeah, the general public was
told
being
us he was going to be a rapper and all this. I remember that was amazing.
It worked.
Yeah, he is one of the greatest actors ever. But unfortunately, with Kanye, I don't think that's know. You watch him in interviews and like he used to be so focused, like not only in his work but in what he said, and now it's like a starburst. He starts with one thing and you can see his mind like it just goes this way and that way, and that I'm not a medical professional, but you can tell someone's dealing with something, right? And they're not all there, so it's kind of it's really sad.
Tracy says he's not going to hide away though because he needs attention, right? So yeah, who knows? We've got our live chat. They're of course at it this morning as they are, and we welcome everybody that joins us live. We do this at 8:30 Mountain Time, 10:30 Eastern, and a lot of people talking about Alberta Premier Danielle Smith's cabinet, and that's something that we've been paying some attention to, and obviously we'll be keeping a close eye on and evaluating and commenting on and soliciting your comments on the early days of Alberta's new government. I mean, it's the same party. It's a new leader, the Danielle Smith government. She's got about 8 months-ish, till the end of May to put her stamp on this and to keep that office that she sought and won. And we've been, of course, keeping an eye on what some of the guests on Real Talk have had to say, including Professor Tim Caulfield, who joined us just the other day. The author of Relax, Damn It, the best-selling author of Is Gwyneth Paltrow Wrong About Everything, the professor of health law and policy at the University of Alberta. And I saw this from him yesterday. Professor Caulfield, one of Canada's, I introduced him the other day as one of Canada's most prominent mythbusters, so to speak. He's big on data and evidence. Fancy that. And this is what he had to say on Twitter yesterday. He says, Dear Premier, dear Danielle Smith, following her comments on vaccines, we played this for you yesterday in my conversation on Charles Adler. Her comments to Derek Fildebrandt, interviewing her on his show through the Western Standard. Remember, she was saying there was no open-mindedness on behalf of Alberta Health Services and politicians, the decision makers through COVID. There was no curiosity with regards to therapies and alternative measures. And she's talking about ivermectin and everything else that she had promoted through that time. We were both radio hosts at Chorus. I remember the email we received. She got her wrist slapped big time. You should have seen that group chat, Johnny. There was an email list that would go around to just the talk hosts, just the hosts that had shows. And I remember that email, basically not naming names, but saying, like, we're not going to use our airwaves to promote unproven therapies through the course of a pandemic. Well, she doubled down on that to Fildebrandt. And so yesterday, Caulfield tweets, hey, listen, Premier, he says, Dear Danielle Smith, vaccines saved millions of lives. He made that argument on Real Talk last week. It's not an argument, it's a fact. He goes on to say therapeutics were studied. It was found that ivermectin is ineffective. And he says consensus, body of evidence is how science works. Please, for Alberta, pleads Professor Caulfield, climb out of the rabbit hole. Don't inform policies with lies, myths, and misinformation. He uses the hashtag Danielle Smith Dark Age. Maybe even more interesting than that, though, and this pointed out by journalist Carrie Tate, who does a great job. You should follow her for sure, support her journalism. She says, did you like Verna Yu subtweeting Jason Kenney? Remember Verna Yu, the former CEO of Alberta Health Services? And ever since she got canned, she's been keeping it classy, but she's been tweeting things about leadership. She's been tweeting things about crisis leadership. And of course, it's pretty obvious to everybody who follows her on Twitter who she's talking about. Well, Carrie Tate says, did you like Verna Yu subtweeting Jason Kenney? Then you'll love Jason Kenney subtweeting Danielle Smith. You know, the subtweet, it's the tweet that doesn't name somebody specifically, but it's clearly talking about them or talking at them. Well, Jason Kenney, the former premier of Alberta, retweeting yesterday a note that vaccines and boosters save lives across all ages. You know, a 96% reduction of death for 2 boosters versus the unvaccinated. These numbers as of the end of May, that from Eric Topol. So Jason Kenney.
Like, what fucking world are we living in when I'm
I don't know, man.
agreeing with Jason Kenney? This is, oh my God.
We might see a different side of Kenney now that he's out of politics for now. You know? I mean, I think that you remember his appearance at the Alberta Municipalities Conference. This was a few weeks ago. And he basically did a stand-up comedy routine. And everybody on stage, I was going, well, who's this guy? This hilarious, likable guy. Who's this guy? It wasn't who he was when he was premier.
Who's that guy?
Yeah, maybe we'll see a different. Maybe we'll see a different Jason Kenney. I don't know. We'll see. But
it's Kenny.
It's Kenney reminding Danielle Smith that vaccines work. So those are a couple of stories that we're keeping an eye on. Stephen Punwasi in just a second. These conversations happen because of sponsors like our friends at Kubi Energy, providing solar energy solutions to power your life. We're going to be giving you a reminder for several of our sponsors. You know, you're going to take a look at what's going on through the winter months, right? And in the winter months, you're going, well, they're not installing solar panels right now, you know, but there's a design process. There's permitting that has to happen. And that's why Kubi is eager to get you to reach out to them right now. Request your quote today at kubienergy.ca. So when the snow melts, and yes, I'm already putting my mind to that point. I'm already thinking of spring when the snow melts. You'll be able to get the guys at Kubi up on your roof, making sure that you get your solar system installed by the best in the business, the Tesla certified installers at Kubi Energy. Our friends at Friesen Brothers have a whole lot of stuff going on right now, and they want to remind you that the first of every month, it's 15% off all grocery purchases of $75 or more. That's a big deal for families keeping an eye on their budgets. We're about to talk cost of living with Stephen Punwasi. Who wouldn't want to save 15% off their groceries? 16 locations across the province with Friesen Brothers. Don't forget their Oktoberfest dinner coming up October 29th and 30th. That's all-you-can-eat German-inspired cuisine, including Alberta beef rouladen, potato dumplings, sauerkraut, and more. You can find out all the details at friesen.com. Coming up as well, we want to remind you at Sherwood and St. Albert Dodge, Alberta's best prices and best selection on the Ram 1500 pickups that everybody loves driving, myself included. What about Alberta's best selection with North America's best-selling SUV, the Jeep Grand Cherokee? You can browse their selection online, the pre-owned and new features, plus, of course, get in touch with their service and parts department. Our family's been doing business with Sherwood Dodge for way longer than we've been doing Real Talk, and that means something to us. We're partners with them for a reason. You can find them under the sponsors tab on our website. Well, big election results last night in the province of Ontario. John Tory's back as the mayor of Toronto. Patrick Brown back in Brampton. Bonnie Crombie in Mississauga reelected as well, plus a couple of former provincial party leaders. We'll get all into it right now with a candidate for mayor of Toronto. He's the co-founder of Better Dwelling. He took leave from his role as chief data scientist there at Stephen Punwasi, making his Real Talk debut. It's wonderful to have you here on the show. Thanks for making time for us.
Hey, Ryan, thanks for having me. I know you've extended invitations a number of times, and I have a little extra time right now.
Well, it worked out, and it's great to have you here. You're obviously running a campaign is a big deal, and I would imagine that you're exhausted, burning the candle at both ends. You had a great team behind you. How are you processing everything now the morning after the results?
Ooh. You know, we're kind of breaking down what happened and what worked and what didn't, and what our successes are. When we started, we knew it was a long shot. We only gave ourselves almost 2 months. Most people started earlier in the year, but the planning for actually running starts almost a year before. We originally decided that when we ran, we just wanted to advance the discussion on what a municipality can do and sort of rethink what's happening, because what we're seeing is more young adults just aren't showing up to the polls. They aren't thinking. Increasingly, people think that government cannot influence their situation and their circumstances. And heading into a recession in the June Ontario election is what really sort of had me concerned here, where just no one showed up. It was one of the worst turnouts ever. And they just, I don't know, we just needed new ideas. And I wanted to push that forward. And we defined our goal as getting people who either normally don't vote or normally aren't politically engaged, as well as advancing the discussion of municipalities working together. And we actually kind of nailed that with other cities adopting our plan. Some governments, like federal governments in Asia, have actually reached out to discuss this sort of interoperability of cities, and that was kind of cool.
Yeah, no kidding. Do you have a hard time wrapping your mind around voter turnout, in particular younger demographics, at a time like this? You know, when housing seems less attainable, affordable housing, or you know, first-time home buyers, whatever. I mean, you know, for a number of reasons, super hot housing markets. I suspect you and I might talk about that. Rising interest rates. People finding that you know, especially younger people living in a city center is tougher financially, or quite frankly unattainable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All these things happening, and yet still young people aren't turning out to the polls. What do you think that is? Is it like it can't be apathy, because I see people troubled about the scenario, so they clearly care. Do they just not think that politics is the right mechanism, or what do you think about it?
I think that they think it's a long shot, and a part of this is the way we present information to young adults. Go back to early polls and sort of the way that it's steered. And this is something that I really didn't realize until I started actually entering politics, is the initial polls are typically done by phone, landline polls. And that really steers our conversation. But when you look at the breakdown of these polls, they end up being, the majority of respondents are above the age of 65, because do you have a landline?
No.
I don't either. So in a lot of cases, we would never be polled for those kinds of things.
When is the last time you had a landline, by the way? Do you remember the last year you would have had a landline?
Not since I lived in my parents' house.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So we have a whole generation of people who have never been engaged in a lot of these polls. So within the city of Toronto, you looked at the initial, like in August, what the initial issues were that the media said that voters were really concerned about. And they were things like my home price, my taxes, the violence in the city. And you talk to young adults, and that's not at all what they're discussing. What they're discussing is there's a lack of opportunity. There is sort of a predatory situation where it doesn't matter how much you make or how successful you are. I know it's getting a little wacky out in Alberta right now, where prices are kind of really picking up, but ish.
Ish. I mean, I was talking to a realtor buddy just yesterday, and he said he had, you know, he was late to meet us last night for the hockey game because he finally had a showing. So, I mean, it kind of ebbs and flows. And I'm not saying that I wish for what you see in you know, the Greater Toronto area or Greater Vancouver, but you know, I mean, like the average house price in Alberta, and not to diminish barriers that people face in entering it, not to overlook or breeze past that, but we're still like half of where you're at.
Yeah, and that's why Alberta as a whole has been so successful in attracting so many people from Toronto. And that's sort of the reason that they're moving to Alberta. And you speak to people and in Toronto, and they're like, I will never move to Alberta, never, ever in my life. And then it just got to this point where it was like, okay, well, maybe Alberta isn't so bad. Maybe like the housing's affordable. They have jobs. I don't have to become a real estate agent. They have teachers.
Can we do a segment, like a brief little snippet here called "The Truth Hurts"? Can you pull no punches and just say exactly why you think people in Toronto would claim that they would never move to Alberta?
Am I giving you the political response? Or am I giving you the
No,
actual
like
real?
the segment's called "The Truth Hurts" with Stephen Punwasi on Real Talk. So what is the reason, or what are the reasons?
So it's seen as a less progressive city, or rather a less progressive province. And like I have this argument with people in Toronto all the time where they're like, I can't move to Calgary, it's racist. I can't move to Alberta, they're too right wing. And I constantly have to go, hey, that perception is really just an amplification of what it's like to view Alberta from Toronto media, because Edmonton is quite possibly a more progressive city than Toronto. And Calgary's, I believe, might be the only major city in Canada that has elected a racialized minority to be mayor. And those are very progressive values. And that's a reflection that they are more progressive. They are a very progressive, it's a very progressive region at scale. And they're willing to adopt that. So the narrative is very different from it. But we do like to take, media really, really, really loves to take that tiny bit of
of course,
right-wing extremism and then amplify it.
Yeah.
And make it seem like it's a whole province of people like that. And anyone from Alberta will tell you that there are problems, but those problems are very few people.
Yeah, it's and when you have political leaders like taking positions, I think that we're seeing right now, it's kind of hard for the an entire province of like nearly 5 million people to combat what that can do to a reputation. Like it's interesting. We haven't really had this conversation on the show, but it's implied. But I think it's important to state that Jason Kenney on his way out, I mean, he made a ton of funding announcements, which people are going, "What are you doing?" Like sort of like legacy building kind of stuff. But at the same time, there was this Alberta is Calling campaign that the provincial government poured tens of millions of dollars into, essentially lobbying Canadians in BC and Ontario to consider moving here. And in a lot of ways, I think that campaign was seen as successful. Some people obviously poked fun at it. But people were saying that it was that it was quite prominent in Vancouver and Toronto and those areas, this campaign, Alberta's Calling, there's opportunity, Alberta's Calling. And then this new government comes in and just immediately starts going to anti-vax and freedom and pardoning pastors that broke health laws during the pandemic. And it's just like, I think if we were to talk to presidents of chambers of commerce or something like that, if we were to talk to business leaders, people in charge of attracting investment, people in real estate, people in development, it's not an ideal circumstance right now for sure. I wanted to ask you another good point. A buddy of mine was working on a campaign in Brampton, and he was quite disappointed that the election fell during Diwali, and he was saying that he was at a polling station, he said in a neighborhood that had a predominantly South Asian population or a strong demographic there. He himself the same, and was just basically dismayed. And he said to me that this would be he said you would never run an election during Christmas. Do you think that had an impact on voter turnout at all? Is that something that was on you or your team's radar?
So we saw the same thing in 2019 where it was held on a major Jewish holiday, and it was very upsetting to the Jewish community because you're right, we would never do that to something like Christmas. And Diwali is a very important holiday for South Asians, and skipping it would be like skipping Thanksgiving for a lot of people. And I think that in a region like Brampton, that definitely would have contributed. I know some people who it did contribute in the city of Toronto. By the time you're done work, you get home at 6 p.m. It's almost time to deal with Diwali. So either you were organized enough or you knew that advance polls were happening. Advance polls in Toronto were very odd because they happened before any debates. The incumbent mayor would not debate anyone until a large portion of people had already voted, which is interesting because you had to have made up your mind before you heard anyone's perspectives on these issues. But going back to what you were saying about Alberta's leadership, it's important to remember, especially if you're not from Alberta, because this needs to be emphasized. Alberta didn't elect this person. A small portion of a party elected this leadership. So it won't really be a reflection of what Albertans think until we see it actually go to the polls. So I don't think that this is a reflection of who Alberta is to have this person in power.
It's going to be fascinating to watch. Somebody came up to me just last night and said, boy, you've got material for at least a year. I said, wow, it's going to be unbelievable. I mean, both, the NDP and the Conservatives, and I should not overlook the Alberta Party either, but I mean, they're in full-blown campaign mode right now. So listen, before we let you go, Stephen, I'd be curious to know if in your assessment, if it was mission accomplished, your mayoral campaign to get people talking about these things. I've got a real talker by the name of Cole, who, when he heard that you were going to be joining us on the show, he said, finally. He said Stephen's stance on higher property tax versus income tax is the best. Please make sure you get him talking on that. Can we wrap with that? Can you take us into what drives your position on this?
Yeah, so both capitalism and socialism agrees that land is a natural monopoly, especially in terms of building a city. So when you build the city, you can just hoard all of the land, and then it creates this multi-generational wealth mechanism. And it's hard to break that. So higher property taxes are for the sake of efficiency. So they typically increase property taxes in very highly productive economies. So if you look at Texas, low income taxes and high property taxes. And the reason is they don't want you to speculate on real estate. They don't want you to buy up and hoard as much real estate. They want you to go out and earn some income through productivity that contributes to the economy rather than just increasing your long-term wealth. And that is sort of how it was structured. Even if you go back to like Adam Smith, the original free market person, he 100% was like, we need complete free markets. It'll self-organize. But we need high property taxes to ensure that people don't just start hoarding land in cities or hoarding the prime farmland, which is now the prime economic land. Otherwise, it results in this non-productive and destructive situation. It is a losing campaign to tell homeowners that you are going to raise property taxes, though. It requires so much harmonization between a municipal and federal government that it would be easier to just buy a new country and start it from that scratch.
Yeah.
It just would not happen.
Alberta's considering making that move, so maybe that could be something Alberta could consider when it separates from the rest of Canada.
If Alberta's doing that, I think that is a very attractive proposition for millennials who realize that they were locked out just because of this generational monopoly position.
Yeah, there's one thing that a politician I think can never do in Alberta. And I'd love for one to prove me wrong, but that's talk about raising taxes. Like if you want to kill your political career in 5 quick seconds, pitch a sales tax in Alberta and just watch it fizzle out and flush. That's kind of how it goes. But if you can get people thinking, I've oftentimes thought that you could sell, and people are going to lose it when I say this out loud, but I've often thought you could sell a sales tax to the populace, to the general population by moving to a capped or a flat income tax. Anti-poverty advocates hate the idea, and I can certainly see why. I think I can argue both sides of that, but I think there's got to be almost like a quid pro quo. You know what I mean? If you want to raise taxes in Alberta, I think you've got to give the people something back. There could be that trade-off. If higher property taxes came with lower income taxes, maybe. But then, like you said, and I'm thinking this out loud as we're talking, then you've got the feds and the province taking less. You've got municipalities taking more. There's no way that the feds or the province would ever agree to that, I don't think.
Yeah, and from the municipality's perspective, we saw this a lot in the Toronto campaign. There's a $750,000 budget deficit, and how are they handling it? They went, we'll ask the Fed for the money. Yeah. So now everyone will complain when the Fed borrows more money and be like, their spending is out of control. And it's like, really, the municipalities aren't allowed to take out their own debt or issue their own bonds. So we have this situation where they kick it up, and it creates this problem for the higher level governments. And we rarely see it go to the province. It always goes up to the Fed. And that's a political tool by itself. So when you get a party that is not aligned with the federal party at a municipal level, they can push up these problems and ensure that those problems get driven to the higher levels of government.
Stephen, I'm so glad. I know you and I could talk for 10 hours. You're a fascinating follow on social
We're going
media.
into overtime, sorry.
Yeah, no, don't ever apologize for that. Like Johnny and I always say, we can do whatever we want here. You know, we're not constrained by the boundaries of terrestrial radio anymore. People can check out more, read a whole lot more about where you're coming from at betterdwelling.com. And, of course, follow you on Twitter at Stephen Punwasi. It's so good to have you on the show, my man. Thanks for doing this. Congratulations on a successful campaign.
Thanks for having me, and I enjoyed it, and I'm sorry that I postponed showing up on your show for so long.
Hey, my man, it always works out when it's supposed to. I love it. That's Stephen Punwasi. You can learn more about him, of course, by checking out the show notes here, unless you're listening live, because quite frankly, we haven't written them yet. But when we post the show on YouTube, when the podcast goes out, you can oftentimes learn more about our guests and link to what they're doing. We always try to have that with as fulsome an amount of information as possible. From Ontario to Saskatchewan in just a second, quick Dick McDick is going to be making his Real Talk debut. But not before we remind you that you have just a few days left to get in on the Covenant Foundation Lottery. That's right, 30 years of dream cars. We keep talking about this $2+ million dream home, but what about the luxury rides or the big cash prizes you can win, right? They give you the choice. Like, do you want to keep the 2022 BMW X3, or do you want the cash? Do you want the 330i sedan, or do you want 60 grand cash? What about the Alfa Romeos? Beautiful whips. You can take the cars or 60K cash, right? What about a Lexus, new Lexus, the car, or you got it, 36 grand cash. Plus there's the 50-50, the trips, Turks and Caicos and Scotland and PEI and just amazing stuff, all in support of the Misericordia and Grey Nuns hospitals. Make sure you get your tickets before the deadline of November 3rd. Why wait till then? Visit covenantfoundationlottery.ca today. Would you keep the Alfa Romeo, or would you take 60 grand cash?
Man, I get rid of all those cars. Give me that money.
Give me the money.
I will drive a Prius. I will drive a tractor down the street.
Yeah, that was a nice tee up for Quick Dick. He drives tractors all over the
place.
place.
But I've never gotten, they're amazing. I'd probably take one I'd put 28 kilometers on one.
You're so practical. You're so practical.
I'd crash it in 3 days anyway.
Well, no, you're just being smart with your money. Like people who do business with local environmental services in Alberta and Saskatchewan. There's some people say it's only garbage, but not to them. They deserve, better. Communities do. That's locals' position on it. Communities deserve better service, better prices, more support for local causes. They've got a huge charitable mandate there. Of course, they do a ton of work in water hauling, fencing, vacuum trucks, landfill. You need a big bin. You're doing a roofing job before the snow flies. Maybe some late season landscaping. Get a quote today from localenvironmental.ca. Don't forget that Trash Talk every Friday presented by Local Environmental. And if you're a professional engineer in Canada that quite frankly is sick of where you're working, they don't appreciate you, they're working you to the bone, you got a long commute, you're out of town all the time, right this minute, check out apexautomation.ca. They're hiring Canada's smartest engineers. They're bringing them in from around the world as well. Why? Because their business is growing year over year. You wouldn't believe it, in many different industries. We're talking about pipelines, natural gas processing facilities, chemical manufacturing plants. What about potash mining in Saskatchewan? That's a booming industry. Apex Automation does it all, giving people back their time. If you're a P-Eng, your best career move might be today. Go to apexautomation.ca. Our next guest needs no introduction in the province of Saskatchewan. He's got literally hundreds of thousands of followers. People there on TikTok, on Twitter. People are following him, of course, on his YouTube channel that sees an avalanche of activity every time he posts a new video. Quick Dick McDick doesn't need me to introduce him. Maybe he should do the honors for himself.
This week, we're going to be talking about Just Stop Oil. So, over in the UK, these two spoiled little shits crack open a couple cans of Heinz tomato soup and throw them all over Vincent van Gogh's Sunflowers painting. Which apparently is this picture here, and if you look at it, I don't know about you, there's a whole bunch of people in the world think that this is some kind of a magical painting. To me, I've seen better paintings come out of the kindergarten class at Plum Lake Elementary School, but that's just me, you do you, let's move on. Then Thelma and Louise here glue their hands to the wall and say they're trying to draw attention to the cost of living crisis because it's associated to the cost of oil crisis, and they're with the eco-activist donkey group Just Stop Oil. Let me see if I have this right. Just Stop Oil is what they want. And the problem with kooks like this, Extinction Rebellion, Greenpeace, the David Suzuki Foundation, is when all of them get together and scream and shout and beat on their drums loud enough, eventually they get a tiny little bit of what they want. Oil and gas starts getting vilified, then companies start divesting in drilling, exploration, and production, and domestic supply begins to wane. And then when the green renewable energy that you've been begging for does not supply dependable baseload, it does not supply fuel for agriculture, forestry, resource extraction, any of the materials that we need for critical infrastructure, and none of the materials that we need to sustain any of our healthcare systems around the world, etc., 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 you then have to start outsourcing your needs for oil and gas to shady characters like Saudi Arabia and Russia.
All right, that's Quick Dick McDick, who joins us now live from the farm. It's nice to see your face. How you doing? I think we got you muted, brother, so we want to make sure we can hear everything you say. Let's get that sorted quickly, and then we can officially do this. There you are.
Can you catch me now?
I got you now. I got you now. Look at you from your professional podcast studio.
Oh, yeah, it's highly professional. I've got a very well-trained group of professional technical teams here that keep me looked after, yeah.
Yeah, you do all your own stuff, right? Writing, editing, shooting. I mean, you do it all.
Yeah, it's quite a bit sometimes, but yeah, it keeps me busy. That's for sure. Yeah. I don't have a big camera crew that follows me around. It's usually just me putting a iPhone in a very precarious place to catch some cool shots. So.
Well, most people hear this on the podcast. You release your stuff. You do a great job visually, and so what people wouldn't see, obviously, on the podcast is that your videos are snippets of different shots. So it'll be 10 or 15 seconds of you in the combine, 10 or 15 seconds of you in the big rig, 10 or 15 seconds of you leaning on your pickup truck kind of idea. Obviously, the stuff is scripted ahead of time. There's a lot that goes into this. It reminds me of the Rick Mercer rants a little bit.
Oh man, I appreciate that. That's I'm a huge fan of Rick Mercer, so that's quite a compliment. But yeah, there's definitely a lot that goes into it. It kind of started off like a little simpler, but I mean the format started off as cutaway production because I kind of started it on Snapchat, and then I just I kept that format just because I just kind of liked the way that it was, and I don't know, it's kind of a fun challenge for me to just see if you can get what you're talking about in a real life background, which. I mean, 99% of the things that I talk about on my YouTube channel are stuff that happens every day, here in rural Saskatchewan. And so it's pretty easy for me to capture it in the background. And I just think it's a more of a viewer's experience if you kind of get to see happening in the background what the person talking about is talking about, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, you're one of the most watched content creators in Canada for sure. I would say virtually every video that you post has over 100,000 views. You've got a huge reach and a big platform. Are you a little bit surprised by it all?
Yeah, actually, I am. The reason I named myself Quick Dick McDick off the start is because I didn't want anybody to find me on social media. So that backfired, I guess. But yeah, I didn't really expect any of this to happen, to be perfectly honest. It just kind of started, being this snowball. It started tumbling down a hill. And it's just kind of, built itself up. I haven't really changed how I do content or what I've done. I've made a few changes. I started trying to incorporate some drone shots and a couple other things just to make it funner for everybody to watch. But essentially, it's just kind of the same thing as what it's always been as it started out as. And I'd fully expected this to have petered out a couple of years ago, but here we are still going. So yeah, as long as everyone's laughing and having fun, right on, right?
Well, I mean, I love your videos and I mean, whether or not people agree with your politics or your takes on things, I think it's completely irrelevant. I love you wear your heart on your sleeve. You're not a big fan of Justin Trudeau. You're not a big fan of the Liberal government. But I've also seen you fact check a lot of right-wing paranoia that's out there as well. As a matter of fact, Johnny, can we call up the fact check video? This, which one I'm talking about, Quick Dick. This was the anthrax video that you posted a while ago.
Yeah,
why don't we take a second? We're not going to roll the whole video, obviously, because we've got you here. But I wanted to roll this one. This is a fact check, so to speak. I think the entire video is about 8 or 9 minutes. People can find it on your YouTube channel, obviously, youtube.com/QuickDickMcDick. But here's a snippet of it. Here's a highlight.
So there's this video going around right now that I have had shared to me. I've been tagged in. I've basically had this thing shoved in my face over the last couple of days of some TikTok guy that has got a bunch of people convinced that the federal government is killing our cattle herd off using anthrax. You gotta be shitting me. Okay, listen, you all know me. I'm about the most anti-Trudeau guy that you're going to find in the country of Canada. In my personal opinion, the only thing that this government has got right since they were elected in 2015 was finally deciding to replace our age-old decrepit fleet of F-18s. That's it. Everything else they've done, they have absolutely and completely bastardized. But just because you might be like me and despise Justin Trudeau and basically his entire cabinet, at some point in time, you have to be able to stop, take a breath, look at what/who you are listening to and watching, and think about it. Like, think about it. Right now, you are listening to a guy named Dick McDick. Okay?
That is my favorite line out of the whole video. Right now, you're listening to a guy named Dick McDick. We promoted this appearance today, calling you the voice of Saskatchewan. Do you feel like you are?
Well, no, I don't. It's, I guess you kind of get numb to views and likes and stuff like that, because it's to me, it's a screen and you're, reading how many people comment on your stuff and everything. And I never really put it together on how many people watch until actually I went to a Chris Stapleton concert in Saskatoon, just recently here. And I couldn't believe the amount of people that were coming up to me. One guy come up to me and just grabbed me, and he was a huge guy, and he lifted me off the ground. He's bear hugging me. He's like, "I love you, man." And I was like, this many people watch my stuff? But I don't know. I always do my stuff as I try to be a voice for my community. And that's just where I leave it at. In any production I do, I kind of make it so that I know that the people in my community will laugh and have a good time and feel okay about it. And whoever outside of that enjoys it or likes it or doesn't enjoy it, but it might spark a bit of a conversation with somebody. I mean, great. That's why I do it, right?
I've just got videos of yours playing here. Right now you've got this video spray, you say, and you're talking to people about spraying and different things on the farm. I hope that this fills your bucket to hear this. This is a true story. I like watch your stuff. I love your stuff. I think it's great. And I was watching
thanks,
you had like a tutorial or like silage 101. You remember this video you did teaching people about silage and what silage is and how it's essentially prepared, and they make the big piles and then they get all the oxygen out. They cover it up for the winter and use it to feed the cattle and everything. So we're at our family farm, my wife's parents, just outside Middle Lake, just outside Humboldt, about a half hour outside, and we're
far from here,
not far from you at all. And we're driving home, and my little guy, 7 years old, is asking what those big white tarps are. What are the big white piles in the fields? And like the city slicker dad gets to talk, well, it's actually silage, and this is how they and like, man, mission accomplished, right? Mission
accomplished, absolutely. And I do some politically polarizing stuff sometimes. I do cooking shows, sometimes I do kid shows, but it's fun to do stuff like that. The silage one was like one of my top 5 favorite videos to do. And I was actually, I had broken ribs when I was doing that video, so I couldn't really do much other than drive a swather. Yeah. So I was just kind of running around grabbing footage and doing some stuff. And it's just, I think it's just fun. Like, say you start incorporating a drone and a few other things and some music and let people have fun watching what they're watching. And I had so many people in the comments of that video just be like, I had no idea that's what those big plastic bags were that we drive by every day. I had no idea. And so, I mean, yeah, again, like I said, mission accomplished. If it's somebody that can be like, no, that's silage and this is how they do it and this is why they do it. And I try and highlight the importance of the beef industry as well, which I'm obviously involved in, and how they work together with modern agriculture. When I did the spray video, there's a lot of people that get going on GMOs and glyphosates and a lot of different things, and you could go through a lot of different things of what we do in real life, but I just try and give everyone the perspective of a Saskatchewan agricultural technician, because a lot of people get upset about things that we do in agriculture when they might in all reality not be getting the straight goods on what we do in agriculture.
I love it. I mean, storytelling is obviously so important. I mean, you want to use beef as an example. You look back to the BSE crisis, like it feels like an eternity ago. But one of the biggest issues there was that they didn't do a good job. And the beef lobby doesn't love to hear this, but they've improved since. I think they didn't do a good job telling their story. And beef obviously was inevitably going to take a hit there. But at the same time, it didn't have to be that bad. You look at a lot of the protests. I mean, we led with your video, your commentary on the vandalism of art, and I thought it was biting and relevant and timely and entertaining. But the oil industry right now, oil and gas traditionally, you look at the ads that they're putting out and the information they're putting out is that they're starting to understand, or at least take it seriously, the importance of storytelling. And I think that the future of agriculture, like to state the obvious, is something that everybody needs to better understand and talk about. I mean, and we can come at it from a million different angles, like cost of living and cost of production. What about shortages of within the supply chain, the cost of groceries? I mean, there's a million different things. I mean, more and more people go to a plant-based lifestyle. More and more people adopting different diets, expecting, different things. That so-called 100-mile diet. People want to see the face of the farmer, right? I mean, there's so many reasons why I think there's a real appetite for a producer like you to be taking people, city slickers in particular, behind the scenes.
So I guess if anyone were to ask me if there was a goal of what I was doing, that would be it. I worked 19 years in the oil and gas industry. I was actually a resident of Alberta for 19 years up in Grand Prairie. And I had no idea when I first went out. I left the ranch here in Saskatchewan as a young man, went out. I had no idea. And I mean, we used oil and gas every day, and I just had no idea where it came from or what the process was to get it to us. And my mind was blown basically for 19 straight years. Not only with that, but I mean, you see how oil and gas works collaboratively with the forestry industry up in northern regions, and how you share roads and leases are logged and made into paper and a lot of different things. And this is 19 years in that, and I didn't even see half of what it takes to get us the products that we use. And I'm very fortunate to have come from a place in Saskatchewan where I've experienced agriculture and I know what it takes to get food on our table. And I think you could do that with basically every product that we have in real life, even the computers that we're using to Zoom with right now. Or if you talk to communications people from, say, Saskatchewan or different places, it's the amount of effort that goes into a lot of different things that we do here to keep us, sustained as Canadians and to sustain life would blow your mind. And we have a lot of people that just want to jump on right away and be like, we have to stop this. We have to stop this. We have to stop this. Oh, okay. I hear you. I will always, promote us doing better and polluting less, but we have to realize at some point in time, we have to draw a line where the lives that we live, that there's going to be a little bit of a carbon footprint to it, or a very intensive process that gets it to us. And if we don't understand that process before we start saying we have to stop it, we should really understand what we're asking to be stopped. Right?
One of the reasons why I wanted to showcase that anthrax video, and I want to ensure that people just go check it out. You got to just watch the whole thing, because you go, I can't remember the word you used, but you're like, the last thing I want to do is amplify donkeys like this or something. And you show, because you're making this guy famous when you use his video, but this guy's claiming essentially that the federal government was spreading anthrax on Saskatchewan farms. There were some issues around trespassing the Saskatchewan government jumped on, but the bigger idea that the Saskatchewan or the federal government was spreading anthrax on farms, and it was Justin Trudeau and this, that, and the other, and you basically are like, let's turn down the temperature on this. We've had a lot of conversation on this show about the polarized nature of politics, and we talked to politicians about it, we talked to commentators about it, we even talked to a psychologist about it last week. Like, what do you do around the family holiday table when you've got people that are four times vaxxed and anti-vaxxers?
I could lay down with a psychologist every now and then. It would help me out.
We all could, and we do, a lot of us. And but I'm curious for your take on a guy that's got a big platform, your conviction on political polarization and on turning down the temperature, while at the same time not turning down the engagement and the need to have conversations and healthy debate. How do you approach that?
Yeah, it's a tough one, and I wouldn't say that I've quite got it figured out yet, Ryan. It's a tough plank to walk, if that's what you want to call it. I did a vaccine video quite a while ago, and a lot of people are just like, you just nuked your YouTube channel, no one will ever follow you again, kind of thing. Get a lot of that going on. And then there's been, with the whole Poilievre leadership race, and then we have the SAS party here in Saskatchewan and whatnot. I get a lot of people that follow me that just jump into this huge fiery pit of ravenous biting as soon as I put out a tweet criticizing some of the marketing campaign strategies that Poilievre was using, or maybe a tweet that the Premier of Saskatchewan puts out that I'm just like, okay, who wrote this tweet? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think the biggest divide that we have, that's the problem, is that when things like this happen, people just think that you are in your lane and you're staying in your lane and you will just blindly support what's happening no matter what. And I try. I don't always succeed at it, but I'm trying as a content creator to just somewhere be down the path that I'd like to see things go and see both sides of it. Where if you look at me, a lot of people hating on me for quote tweeting the premier, but then a lot of people hating on me for trying to dispel this guy talking about anthrax and cattle. But like, I'm no different than any Canadian. I want what's best for people. And if I see something goofy or it's hypocritical, I'm going to call them out, whether it's on my side or on somebody else's side or wherever. Just if I see it, it's coming at you, you know?
Yeah, well, you've certainly, like, you've got a real talent with regards to what you do and how you get your message out and how you cut the videos. And you know, like, people have such short attention spans too, right? Like, holding someone's attention through a video takes a real talent. What do you see as the future of your, you know, this empire that you're building? What do you see yourself doing with this down the line? You going to ramp it up even more?
I don't really know how I ramp it up more. I spend a lot of time. I spend a lot of time at this, and I don't have a lot of time to spend at it because obviously, like what you see me doing throughout the course of the day isn't just, you know, stage theater. I mean, we're in cattle and agriculture here, and it's very busy. I've started doing a lot of live shows since restrictions kind of lifted here, which has been totally different. Jumping in front of a crowd and doing like an hour and a half of stand-up comedy has turned into one of my favorite things to do. Because I like it when people it's fun. You could do a YouTube video and put your stuff up there and you have time to look at it. And maybe if you want to change one clip that you did or whatever you want to do, you got time to do it. Right. But I just like having to think on your feet in front of an audience. And it's been really cool to be able to do that. Is that new for you? I mean, have you been honing that craft of stand-ups, like you just said, is totally different than doing edited videos. It totally is, but oh man, spoiler, this is a Real Talk exclusive here. I was full on through my years in high school. Like, I was in drama in high school, man. Like I was always like one of the only guys of a handful of us that would be in drama. I'd always get like the leading role in it, and I've always been comfortable being in front of a crowd, and it's fun, it's good. But like I'm kind of a people person, and if you can be a people person and you can be a goofy person, you can stand in front of people and have fun with them. You know what I mean? It's and I've got time in the tractor to rehearse my stuff and work on it. Yeah, you got to work at it too. If you started at my first show versus where I am now, I mean, they're two different shows, but it's still super fun either way, right?
Yeah, no kidding. I love your merch too. QuickDickMcDick.ca. People can check it out. You don't have hoodies like a good Saskatchewan boy. You got bunny hugs.
I've got bunny hugs. Yeah, that's right. Actually, I'm not wearing it today, but I got my hat on. But dude, that's been if you ever would have told me that I was going to know the difference between a 50-50 poly cotton and an 80-20 cotton blend and all this different stuff, but that's been a neat thing, which has kind of been another one of my missions of doing this is to try and get people interested in where things are made and where you buy them from. I'm a huge advocate of made in Canada, a product of Canada, if you can, to support our local Canadian economies. And the amount of work that it took to dig through and actually find people that make clothing still in Canada would frighten a lot of people. We rely on a lot of overseas people to make the things that we use in everyday life. But I found, you know, some guys in Burnaby and in Richmond and a few places out in Ontario, a few in Calgary. And yeah, we've got a Canadian made line of merch that comes through, and I've got a lady here that ships it right out of Tufnell, Saskatchewan, which is like, how awesome is that?
That's
you know
great.
What I mean? Yeah. So
no, we're the exact same, really man. Cool. We're the exact same. We wanted to, like, our mugs are done in Calgary. Our t-shirts, like a lot of our merch, our hats are done in BC. We were the exact same way. We wanted to support local wherever we could, but it's the hustle, right? It's so, like, you and I have different backgrounds, obviously, but you know, you had your career in energy and oil and gas. I had a career in, you know, like mainstream or, you know, big corporate broadcasting, and then now the thing that is so exciting is also the thing that is so terrifying, and that's that you're responsible for everything, but you also are doing it for yourself, which is really, really neat. Is there, like, when we ask what's the coolest bit of feedback or what was a moment of like a fan of what you do or one of your followers or something said to you? Is there something that jumps out at you? Did
man.
Somebody, or you had a ton of it, I would imagine?
There's lots. I had one guy send me he sent me a receiver hitch for Morty that had a horseshoe welded on the back of it with QDM welded in the horseshoe. Like, how cool is that? I've had a lot of stuff sent to me, and lots of people reach out to me, but I get sent pictures lots from teachers that are showing like my Terry Fox run video or my Ode to Oats video and stuff like that to their classrooms. And that's why I really like doing my little quicks videos for kids to learn and have fun. And to all the parents out there that are very concerned about a guy named Quick Dick McDick, being played in their class and everything, I do an entire list of kids videos that are kid friendly. And I love kids. I love being around them, and it's super fun. And they're our future. They're the ones that are going to grow up and eventually take this country over from us someday. And it's just important that they see a well-rounded variety of things, and being exposed to a farmer that's actually out, planting crops and working with cattle and things like that. I think there are a lot of things that kids need to see and need to understand how these things work. It's very important. I think we're slowly getting very removed from our roots of where we came from and how we eat.
Yeah.
And how we heat our homes. And I think, and even yourself, Ryan, if you say you're from up in the Humboldt area there, like would you say that you've been removed from your roots a little bit?
Well, let me say, so my wife's family, they're from there. That's where they're at. But my family, like my grandpa was one of 11 kids, and he moved down to Calgary during the Second World War and raised his family down there. The rest of them, a huge farming family, and they still farm. It's now like the sixth generation is they're now raising the sixth generation on the dairy farms, and not far out of Edmonton, like 15 minutes out of Edmonton, Spruce Grove, Stony Plain, Westlock. So I did they would, my cousins, some of them will watch or listen to this show, and I'm going to get texts from them right away if I try to pretend like I even would know how to start a tractor. There's no way. But at the same time, we try to get our little guys out there and on the farm and getting their boots dirty a little bit as well, so they understand not just about agriculture and not just about dairy or not just about whatever, but also about the family history, the rich family history. There's a family cemetery. It's pretty fascinating stuff, right? And so it's really important to us. My heart's full every time I'm out there.
That's awesome. Yeah, family lineage is very cool. And that was, I put that at the end of my last video there, where we spent harvest being very busy. And the first thing I wanted to do as soon as we got stopped, I just wanted to go and sit with my mom and dad and visit with them. I moved home here a few years ago to get back into agriculture, and that was one of the biggest reasons why I did it, was because I was separated from my family and everybody that I loved all the time. And it's just like, I need to change that, because, whether it's my parents that won't have me or me that won't have my parents, eventually that's how life works. You just need to do what you can to try and spend time with people that you love. And that's, that's some of the things that I try and promote on my channel, along with all the other kooky things that we talk about,
What do you see, like a guy like you, like, are you in your 30s? What's your ballpark age?
Oh man, I'm I will be 40 this year.
Oh wow, all right. So, but relatively speaking, a young guy with a lot of career ahead of you. Do you see you come back home to work in agriculture? It's a lot of people are wondering what the future of ag will look like. And there's a lot of contributing factors, but a lot of the big farms are being acquired. People are lamenting the loss of topsail. It's maybe less financially realistic for young people to farm, just with the costs of entry, etc. Is that on your radar? And what do you see around you?
It's definitely tough to get into farming. It's very expensive to get into farming. And I think, we see a lot of the bigger operators. I won't name drop, but there are some very big farming corporate companies here in Saskatchewan. But that being said, when you get into my neck of the woods here, there's a lot of guys around here, guys and girls that farm around here that have been doing it for years. And like you say, that are working on centennial farms, and it's been passed down from generation to generation. And contrary to what a lot of narratives would have people believe, there are operators around here that care deeply that new people get into agriculture and help give them starts. And it'll start off as they'll get a guy working for them, and then, you can use a little bit of my equipment to help seed your place, and we'll haul it and we'll store your grain here, and they help guys get going. So as much as we hear that commercial farming is stomping a lot of people out, there are some great people out there still that are doing what they can to try and get new people into the game that have a passion for it. So I think as long as that keeps advancing how it is, it's still going to be a great future for agriculture. Anybody getting into agriculture right now is getting into agriculture at an amazing time. There's so much technology that's coming at us from all different levels, and you get your old guys that drove around on a John Deere D, and the size of their harrows was half the size of a combine header nowadays, kind of thing, that are like, we don't need any of that stuff. But we got a cool generation of people coming up in agriculture right now that look into technology and what's happening. And I hope in the next 5 years we see drones out flying around spraying some crops and stuff and doing things better. And the amount of people that continually try to do things better and better and better is just it's like spirit lifting to see everybody striving to do better. I'm very proud to be a part of agriculture.
Yeah, it blows my mind that the tech that there is in farming. I mean, I guess if your combines weren't driving themselves, you wouldn't be able to shoot your videos behind the wheel, right? So,
well, and that's like, and to that point, you know, like there's a couple of retired guys that come out and help us drive combines every now and then, and everybody's like, a lot of activists are like, your tractors will drive themselves in the next 5 years, and you're going to be out of work. I'm like, I can't wait for a tractor that drives itself so that I can go and get one of the other 8,000 things that I need to get done in a day done. You know what I mean? It's great. Yeah, where technology is headed and the embracing of it is great. And it's always good to have some older neighbors kicking around that can keep you grounded a little bit too. I'd tell you a quick story about neighbor Bob if we had time.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. All right. Tell us about neighbor Bob.
Okay, so Bob is a guy that's a retired farmer, right? And I always say neighbor Bob in my video. Neighbor Bob's a real guy. He's a straight up real guy. Yeah. And he's probably the most grounding guy that you'll ever get in your life. And neighbor Bob's job is when we got to move a combine from somewhere, say, or a tractor from somewhere a couple miles away to back to where we are. Neighbor Bob's job is to come and give you a ride. And if you don't phone him and ask him to come give you a ride, he will be pissed at you. He'd be like, how did you move that tractor over there? No, I got to be a part of this. I got to help you move trucks. But I've come to find that the best time that I spend on the farm is riding around in the passenger seat with neighbor Bob, because he farmed for over 60 years. And he's seen a lot of bad stuff. And when it came, you know, to our last drought, we had a really bad drought here last year, and it was kind of a bad harvest. And Bob was cruising around and taking me over to the combine that we were going to move to another field. And we stopped in the middle of the road, and he put the truck in park and he shut it off. And we looked out into a place that was typically, you know, full of water. And there were some old dead trees drowned out in the middle of this place. And there was nothing, just rocks, a dry lake bed, and some old trees there. And he says, you see those old trees there? I said, yeah. It's pretty dry out there, hey? I was like, yeah. He says, do you know why that tree is there? I said, because it grew there, Bob. He said, that's right. Because I remember a lot of years where this was dry and a tree could grow there because there was no water. He says, it's not going to be that way forever. This spring, we were driving out to get the drill from the same field to move it back, and we had a exceptional amount of moisture here this spring, and it was right up to the road. The water was back up to the road, and I knew what was coming. He stopped. He put the truck in park, shut it off, and he didn't say a word. He just looked out at the tree, pointed at it, looked at me, winked, started the truck, and but like it's great to have guys like that just to keep you grounded and keep you in check with what's going on, right? Because it's good for your mental health.
100%. Man, it's awesome to catch up with you. We should let the audience know that we were going to get you on earlier, but you had a little thing called harvest that you had to handle. And we appreciate you finding time in your day to talk to us now. We endeavor to connect with storytellers across the country, and undeniably you've built a huge audience, and for good reason. I know that what you have to say resonates with a lot of people. Folks can find you at youtube.com/QuickDickMcDick, and of course QuickDickMcDick.ca if they want to pick up a bunny hug or whatever else. Thanks for making time for us. We made it through this whole thing without asking you about your first name, without your real name, so to speak. We'll keep it a secret.
It's Dick, believe it or not. I've been a Dick all my life. Yeah. So
there you go. Quick Dick.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me on.
Thanks a lot, buddy. We appreciate it. There he is, proudly flying the Canada and Saskatchewan flags behind him. That's a fun conversation. I see in the live chat that not everybody agrees with the guest, which is also okay. The way I see it is if we're doing a talk show where everybody feels comfortable and agrees with all the guests all the time, then we're not doing our job. You can always send us feedback to talk@ryanjesperson.com or hit us up on our hashtag RealTalkRJ. A lot of talk about innovation through that conversation, and it tees up nicely a feature that we present in partnership with Leading Edge Physiotherapy every Tuesday here on the show. We call it The Leading Edge, and it's a celebration of those who are innovating or making an impact in the world around them. And today, we celebrate young inventor Lily Bourne. I love this story. When Lily was 8 years old, she couldn't ignore the fact that her grandfather, who had Parkinson's disease, was constantly spilling his drinks, and Grandma was left to clean up the mess. And so Lily, at 8 years of age, invented something new. This is absolutely amazing. We love this. The Kangaroo Cup. It won't tip. Her company is called Imagaroo, and you can find them online at imagaroo.com. And so she and her dad traveled across the world to the ceramics capital of China, Jingdezhen. And there they were able to refine their products, refine the design of it, find a manufacturer, and prepare for a production run. Well, how did they afford it? Well, crowdfunding, Kickstarter, and Indiegogo. She raised about 20 grand, which is what she needed to roll out her invention to the masses, and they've sold more than 2,000 cups to date. Now, they're about to release a BPA-free plastic Kangaroo cup manufactured in the States. It's stackable, it's more durable than its predecessor, and today, 8 years since she first invented this amazing product, now 16 years of age, Born has sold tens of thousands of Kangaroo cups worldwide. She says, we're working to develop a cup that substitutes sippy cups and helps with the children's palate. It's different. Kids' palates are different, helping them develop the ability to swallow. She says we're working with pediatric orthodontists to develop that product. For overcoming obstacles, for addressing an issue, for designing a product that has found use around the world with people of all ages, we are proud to feature Lily Bourne on The Leading Edge. Presented by our friends at Leading Edge Physiotherapy, life shouldn't hurt. I absolutely love that. She's 8 years old at the time. She sees Grandpa's spilling his cup, and she does something about it. How cool is that?
I feel like there's a lot of younger people doing a lot more than me. Like we had the 16-year-old last week, right? Or
developing the foot-controlled mouse for making computer technology more accessible to amputees. Yeah, same sort of a deal.
I wonder if we're just like young kids are just smarter, or is it the internet? Is it because just information is at your fingertips? They're just growing up like they're already smarter than we are.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, accessibility to information, to learn, to tutorials. People YouTube everything.
Yeah.
I see you do it all the time.
Well, I'm trying to catch up.
Well, no, but I hope you give you enough credit on this show for what you do. But you are constantly problem solving, and how valuable of a resource is YouTube.
Well, I just love
right?
that if you don't know something now, you can know it in 2 seconds, right? But it's incredible. Like the young people, the last 2 weeks we've been talking about have like blown my mind with these inventions.
Yeah, so cool. Yeah. I love it, and I can think of a lot of things in life that I took a look at and realized were a problem and did nothing about. I didn't crowdfund 20 grand.
I hope somebody fixes this for me someday.
I hope. I mean, not me, but hopefully a 10-year-old can solve this for us.
How do I get a sandwich and a drink to my living room in 3 seconds without?
Oh my gosh, yeah, to be the person that, and then you see these I think of something. This is such a dumb comment I'm about to make because there's so much more that goes into it. But there have been huge inventions, like society-rocking inventions, that are so obvious.
Yeah.
Like skip the dishes is so obvious.
Yeah.
Facebook is so obvious.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I often talk about the first newspaper article that I ever wrote. My first job in media was for the Calgary Herald. It was a dream come true. My childhood, in my hometown, the newspaper always had wanted to work at the Herald. And the very first story that they assigned me was this woman in her 80s named Edna Quinney. And she had written this can I use the word adorable, this like amazing like handwritten letter to the Calgary Herald. This was, this is 1999.
Yeah.
And so there was, barely email at the time. There was, but not really. Mm-hmm. And so she wrote this handwritten letter, and she was looking for her classmates from her elementary school like 75 years prior. And so I did this this was not exactly the hard-hitting news, but it was nice to be off the car crash beat for a while.
Did you private eye it and find them?
Well, no, but we used the platform of the print edition of the Calgary Herald, obviously, because that's how everyone was getting their paper. To write about this, to tell this woman's story and say, Edna Quinney is looking for her roots or searching for her roots. And we wrote this whole story about she's trying to find her classmates. She wants to connect with the people she used to connect with. And being that it was my first story in print, my first byline, as they call it, it was special to me. And so I framed it, right? And I was looking at this like 15 years later, and I'm like, this was the formula for Facebook. We identified the formula for Facebook 10 years ahead of time and did nothing about it.
But it's funny how something so grand to you back then is just like I could just post it on Facebook right now in 2 seconds,
I'm
or
looking
any
for-
social media platform.
It would tell you. It would find your classmates for you.
It's incredible. 20 some odd years later,
The
that
classmates you thought you had left behind, never to see
I
again, are
was
all of
a
a sudden back in your face, sharing it. Oh, man. What's the invention that you missed out on? What's the idea you had that somebody else took a hold of and did something about? I'd love to hear those stories. I bet you we'll get an email from somebody that missed the $1 billion boat, that really missed it. Talk at RyanJesperson.com. You know, when you're on our website, you can also find links to all of our sponsors, and that includes the team that has been powering our hashtag, Real Talk RJ, since this show launched, and that's our great friends at Park Power, your friendly local utilities provider. We know that we're about to be paying more, right, for natural gas. Winter is upon us. Your furnace probably, depending on where you live, but I bet you your furnace just fired up for the first time in a while, right, in the last few days. Same with the electricity. If you're running space heaters, whatever it is, in the winter, we just tend to use more. Why not pay less with Park Power? Compare rates today, and when you take your business over to Park Power, make sure you use the promo code 2022-REAL-TALK. It's going to knock $70 off your first bill, right? That's like a dinner. Park Power is going to buy you dinner with that promo code. We also want to give a big shout out to our friends at Eden Landscaping. This is the time of year where Mike starts getting into the paperwork. He's filling out forms. He's making sure the real property reports are pulled, and then their design team gets to work. They are a full-service landscape builder with more than 20 years of on-the-ground experience in Edmonton and area. You don't need to hire a landscape architect, then hire a contractor, then bring in trades, and then somebody screws up, and then you got to call somebody else to fix it. No way. No nightmares with Eden Landscaping. They guarantee it. Just look at the referrals they've earned. Look at the return business. You can check out their portfolio. Beautiful work at landscapeedmonton.ca. And our friends at the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park want to remind you that despite snow in the forecast, everybody loves a blizzard, right? The fall blizzard menu's out right now, and we've been showing you the cinnamon roll centers blizzard treat. We've been showing you the pumpkin pie blizzard treat, but we would be remiss if we didn't mention the new coffee crisp caramel macadamia blizzard. What? The berry cherry chip blizzard. The frosted sugar cookie blizzard, which that's next on my list, Johnny. I'm going to be hitting that one up. And, of course, the Oreo hot cocoa blizzard. Hot diggity damn. Jesus. You'll find those at the Dairy Queens of Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, and in Sherwood Park on Baseline Road.
Blizzards all year round.
Which one was it that which one spoke to you there, John? Which one was it?
I mean, my wife is all about the cinnamon bun.
Yes.
Cinnamon bun lattes. We had them on Sundays.
Oh, so, yeah. The cinnamon bun, the cinnamon roll centers blizzard.
You get over pumpkined this time of year, and you have to.
It's possible.
You have to switch lanes for a couple days.
It is possible. It is possible. I told you I picked up the pumpkin pie blizzard the other day. We got large one because I said to Wyatt, our 7-year-old, I said, you and I can split this. Well, we were coming back from Thanksgiving. We'd had a couple of outings with the family. He says, I think I've had a little too much pumpkin. I said, well, I'll just hammer this thing myself. So I took down the large all to myself, and that was enough for the rest of the day. Hey, through the rest of this week, we're going to be focusing on the stories I know that matter to you, Real Talkers, and that's due in part because you let us know. We encourage you to reach out to the show. When we say it's your show, we mean it. We desire your feedback. We want your insights. We love that Stephen Punwasi interview. That was Real Talkers like Cole that reached out and said, when are you going to get this guy on the show? His conversation about cost of housing and tax structures is what we need to hear more of. We want to force ourselves to think outside these parameters. It's our mission, and we'll do it all again tomorrow. We hope to see you then.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harmon Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.